Welcome to the Week 5 edition of the DFS Jam. I'm your host, Peter Overzet, here on the Fantasy Life YouTube channel. We do this stream every single Thursday at noon Eastern. It's kind of a hodgepodge affair, although it has been tilted toward drafting teams on Underdog, and it kind of serves as my first look for the Underdog and DraftKings slate. I have drafted only one team so far this week, and so this is where I'm really starting to get my feet wet. I wrote my Fantasy Life DFS article this morning, so starting to get a feel for this slate, and yeah, excited to talk it through with you guys today. We can bust out the randomizer wheel again and see if we have any fun challenges for drafts we want to do. But yeah, I figure we can jump right in here. Maybe looking at the overall slate here as far as what we're looking at. Definitely a little bit trickier in that this is our first slate with buys. The bye weeks have hit. We also have a lot of injuries this week that is opening up a decent amount of value. One interesting wrinkle on Underdog is if you have gone to try to draft Michael Carter, he is not in the player pool. I don't know exactly how or why that happened, but that is an unfortunate development for us there. You always want, any fantasy relevant player to be in the player pool, but he is not going to be there. So that's something to note if you were planning on trying to draft him on Underdog this week. But let's get this shared here. As you could tell, searching for Carter in the chat, and he is not coming up. He is available on DraftKings, though. He is the stone minimum. He is $4,000 on DraftKings, and I think it's an interesting play over there. Normally, I'd be kind of skeptical of the Michael Carter type play. He's obviously going to lose pass catching work to Amari DiMercato, who's been operating as the pass catching back for the past couple of weeks since James Conner went down. But on the flip side, the Cardinals are 7.5-point home favorites here versus a really miserable Titans squad. So that brings it back into play for me. The two down grinder on a team who is projected to win by more than a touchdown, that's certainly relevant for our interests here. Let's do a quick kind of survey, though, of the slate from an over-under perspective, just kind of see which game environments are intriguing to us. So the first game in the 1 p.m. window here that looks particularly juicy is this Colts-Raiders game. Has a total of 48 here, which is a pretty good total. There's generally only a couple of these that are over 46, 47 on the week. Kind of like this is a bounce back spot for the Colts. I know Daniel Jones's points have gone down each week since week 1, but this seems like a really nice get-right spot. The Raiders seem to just find themselves in a lot of shootouts. With a pretty leaky secondary. Pretty sad state of affairs here with this Ravens and Texans game, a total of 40.5. Obviously, that total indicates we're probably not going to see Lamar Jackson. The injury reporting on that was kind of funny. Initially, they're like 2 to 3 weeks. We're all working under the assumption we wouldn't see him until after their week 7 bye. And then all of a sudden yesterday, they're like, he's going to try to go this week. I don't think he plays. Ultimately, he didn't practice yesterday. Seems like they'd want to give him at least a week off, even if things are trending a little bit more positively. And this total here indicates that Sharp Money thinks he's not playing. And this feels like a Cooper Rush type of line here at 40.5. Broncos-Eagles, kind of an interesting one in that, the total doesn't look great at 44. And yet I think there are pieces in this game that could certainly, speed it up and make it pretty fun for fantasy purposes. So I could see this being a contrarian game environment. Saints-Giants, pretty ugly. Total of 42 there. Obviously no neighbors, just not a lot of firepower in this game. I do like that the Saints are back at home, though. I think for guys like Juwan Johnson and Chris Olave, who had been seeing really good volume and then kind of, petered out last week on the road at Buffalo, I think this looks like a decent bounce back spot for them. Carolina and Miami, we obviously have no Tyreek Hill, which is going to make Devon Achane and Jalen Waddle both really good plays, very strong plays on both sites. The Panthers, one thing I'm monitoring there is Chuba Hubbard is dealing with, I believe it's a calf injury. He didn't practice yesterday. If he, for some reason, doesn't go this week, Rico Dowdle, I think could potentially be the play of the week on DraftKings from a value perspective. And he would be a guy we could certainly scroll to on Underdog. He is not getting drafted right now. You can see here an ADP of 36. So I'm going to, put that one in my back pocket there. Dallas Cowboys versus the Jets. This is one that is going to be, I think, extremely popular on both Underdog and DraftKings. The Cowboys are giving up the most points to opposing quarterbacks. Every single team is teed off on them. Now they go on the road to New York. So Fields and Wilson stacks are going to be popular. And normally it'd be like, oh, let's pivot to the running back situation. That'll be kind of our tournament pivot. Except Breece Hall is going to be popular too, because he's cheap on DraftKings and Braylon Allen was just put on IR. So there's not a lot of ways to play this game in a sneaky fashion. The one play I do kind of like is Mason Taylor. He had a really nice role last week. I think had almost a 26% target share, which wasn't even too far off from Garrett Wilson. So Mason Taylor might be the kind of only sneaky way to play the Jets passing game against this really bad Cowboys secondary. We head over to the Bucs and Seahawks. The big news here, of course, no Bucky Irving. We're going to see a ton of Rachaad White. I think in the season-long streets, the enthusiasm for Sean Tucker is warranted. He is the guy, I think, over the course of a few weeks that could really start to earn more of that base work. But on a quick turnaround for losing Bucky, this feels like the Rachaad White show to me. And specifically on DraftKings, he's a really nice play just with that pass-catching upside. On Underdog, with an ADP of 35.8, that's still interesting to me. If he was in the 25s, I'd be like, man, that kind of seems like more of a fade spot. But at this draft percentage, he's barely getting drafted right now. So Rachaad White as the lead back, any lead back who's going to project for 15 plus touches, that's getting drafted less than 10% of the time, that's something we should be interested in. Let's go through a couple of these other games on the main slate, and then we will get drafting here. Tennessee Titans, Arizona Cardinals. This is a pretty ugly one. Again, we have a running back shift here with Michael Carter and Amari DiMarcado taking over with Trey Benson on IR. I am interested in Carter. Can't play him on Underdog. I think he's going to be an intriguing play on DraftKings, depending on where the ownership shakes out. And I think just playing the Cardinals passing game here, even though it doesn't feel good, the fact that they're 7.5-point favorites here at home, McBride, Marvin Harrison, Kyler, I think those guys are all going to be decent plays. This game here, Lions-Bengals, this one's super interesting to me, and pretty big disparity in how, Jared Goff is being viewed on Underdog versus DraftKings. You can see here on Underdog, he's the QB3. ADP of 28.3. That means he's getting drafted in almost 100% of these contests. On DraftKings, he costs $6,500, which is pretty expensive relative to the rest of the quarterback position. And I don't think he's going to catch much ownership at all over there. But man, you look at this spot. Yes, they're on the road, but this total is a 49.5. The Lions themselves are implied to score almost 30 points. They're the number one offense in the league right now from a scoring perspective. They have a 30-point team total here. I think you're going to be wanting to load up on Lions when you can. Obviously, Amon-Ra and Gibbs are the non-sneaky ones, but I like Jameson Williams here as well. He bounced back with a really nice target share, 32% target share last week. It just didn't really convert into the box score. So JMO here seems pretty sneaky to me. And on DraftKings, that stack stood out. Our final game here of the main slate is Commanders and Chargers, hopefully getting Jaden Daniels back this week. That would make this game very fun. It does have a total of 48, which is pretty solid there. And again, this is one of my kind of favorite spots on Underdog when I looked at it this week. If we look at the Chargers here, Quentin Johnson is up to an ADP of 19.1. Now, I don't even necessarily think that's bad. I think it can be efficient, but I think at the same time, Ladd being at 35.1 and Keenan being at 35.4, these are the kind of spots you want to exploit on Underdog, where the confidence in the wide receiver 1 relative to the wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3, I don't know if it's fully warranted on a week-to-week basis. Obviously, it's been the QJ show through 4 weeks, but I really think this is the kind of offense where things could easily swing back to Ladd, swing back to Keenan. So the fact that you could draft Justin Herbert, who's currently the QB6, with either of his pass catchers at low ownership is pretty intriguing to me there. And as always, thinking about the Q tags, Jaden Daniel right now is the QB5 because of that Q tag. But if he goes, he'll have an ADP around or even higher than Justin Fields. I would guess, like, if there were zero injury concerns, everyone's like, Jaden Daniels is a full go. I think he'd have an ADP of 12 or 13. So now is the time to take Jaden Daniels. If for some reason he doesn't go again, you can get the swap. But otherwise, you're going to get, 18 picks of closing line value there. What is up, Index of Suspicion? Good to see you. Paul hitting me with a defensive question here. Would I start Browns DST or Rams DST this week? Yeah, both great options there. It is the Rams going against Mac Jones with basically no weaponry. That is probably where I would gravitate personally. But like you said, the Browns defense has been one of the best in the league here. In that game versus the Vikings has a crazy low total here as well. But I'd feel a little bit better about picking on Mac Jones. But yeah, that feels like a true coin flip to me. All right, let's draft some teams here. And we can talk through some more thoughts. If you guys have questions, I'll just draft one regularly here, and then we can build out maybe some funny, or I would meant to say funkier builds here with the wheel. All right, let's see what we got. We got the 102 here. Daniel, Flex, Sutton, Michael Carter, or Mason in full PPR. What I would do, my good friend, is head over to our weekly rankings. My gut says Carter is safer. Sutton has the maybe higher upside, and Mason is probably the odd man out there. Let's see where our rankings crew has this. Carter, we have as the consensus 80th player. That seems a little light to me personally. It looks like our rankings will like Sutton. Sutton, at 37. And then Mason at 27 consensus there. So yeah, I might be a little different than some of our rankers on how I view that, but Sutton is probably your play there. All right, I'm on the clock. Gibbs goes 101 here. I think this is a strong running back week at top between Taylor, Achane. I think you could even include Hampton in that mix. I will just go with the 101 by ADP Jonathan Taylor here with my first pick. Do I like Chase Brown or Godwin in full PPR? Definitely Godwin. I mean, Godwin came back ran 91% of the routes, had a 26% target share. I thought he was going to be limited coming back. I mean, the dude hadn't played football in almost a year, that they were going to ease him back in. No, he had a full-time role. Seattle is a tougher defense, but Chase Brown right now in just that entire Bengals offense is so hard to like or trust. And Chase Brown's fantasy value is basically bottomed out in this Jake Browning offense. So I would definitely go Chris Godwin there in full PPR. The wide receivers, though, on the flip side on this slate, it's pretty weak, right? We don't have Puka, obviously no Jefferson here. It's JSN and Amon-Ra at the top. After that, Garrett Wilson, we mentioned that good matchup. George Pickens coming off of a monster game. Nico actually seems a little undervalued to me here at the wide receiver 5. He's been awesome. And now gets a really good matchup. I mean, this Ravens secondary has been really, really bad. Pretty sad to see Jamar Chase all the way down here at 16.8, but I think it's warranted. Jalen Waddle's ADP has been on the rise. Tedoria McMillan, Debo, Jameson. So, I mean, there's guys to like here, But to me, honestly, like after those top 2 or 3, I don't think there's a huge difference between a guy like George Pickens and, all the way down here into this AJ Brown, Marvin Harrison range. And again, I prefer Pickens to those guys, but it's more to illustrate that it's a pretty long tier here. Let's see. Speaking of the devil, Pickens is here. Derrick Henry is here. Yeah, don't love Henry without Lamar. I'm going to go ahead and take Trey McBride. I think pretty clearly the top tight end on this slate. Brock Bowers, man. Every single week I draft a decent amount of Brock Bowers, and he just does not look right now with this brace on. We got the quote too from Pete Carroll. They said he's going to continue wearing this brace for another couple of weeks. So he's certainly draftable. ADP of 22.6 isn't anything outrageous, but the selling point for Brock Bowers right now and just being able to separate from the tight end position, I just don't know if that's true. I am going to grab Nico Collins here. Like I said, I think he's slightly undervalued. He falls to pick 14. And we go Jonathan Taylor, Nico Collins, Trey McBride to start this draft. Pickens getting sauced. Yeah, that's another good note as well. I think Pickens is a great player. His target share is going to be awesome, but he's also the type of player that can get taken away. Just how he wins. And I think he was the beneficiary of a really good game environment. All my homies hate Brace Bowers. I have not heard that nickname yet. That is incredible and also depressing. Brace Bowers. Oh, man. So much Brock Bowers in season long, drafting him every single week in these dailies. It's really, really sad. Really, really sad. I understand from a team perspective, still having him out there is helpful for some blocking as a threat. But it's almost like you just wish that he rested up for 3 weeks as opposed to just giving us these very middling fantasy performances. Let's see if Concrete Cowboys takes Justin Fields here. If he doesn't take Justin Fields, I will certainly take him at pick 23. I should pull up the splits here. Matthew Friedman had his quarterback stuff, and he had some of the stats for Fields here. These are the quarterback scores versus the Cowboys this week over the course of the season. Hurts 24.3 points, Russell Wilson 31.3, Caleb Williams 29.1, Jordan Love 26.3. Fields does go, so we don't have to deal with that. Let's see here. Let's do Waddle. I haven't done anything like super creative yet in this draft, so we'll probably try to get creative with one of the last 2 picks, but Waddle without Tyreek Hill is very strong. Quarterback here, I think Kyler. I do think the Kyler and Trey McBride stack is good just because, Trey McBride, you're kind of often drafting him for the floor. The targets are going to be so good. But when he does go nuclear, it probably means Kyler's throwing for more TDs than expected. I love Daniel Jones as a scroll down quarterback this week, but I'm not going to use him on a team with Jonathan Taylor. This would also be spots where I think you could do a naked quarterback. And back-to-back weeks in the Battle Royale, a naked quarterback has taken down the contest. Let's see here. Who else do we want to do? This could be a 3 wide receiver team for us here. Jameson Williams goes. That's one of my my sneaky guys there. Let's do someone asked about Chris Godwin earlier. Let's get a Chris Godwin scroll here. ADP of 35.6. We'll do a 3 wide receiver build, which is something that you don't want to be doing too much. The data shows that you really want to be doing it maybe 1 out of every 5 lineups at most, but closer to more like 1 out of every 10. The 2 running back lineups have been dominant this year. But circling back to the naked QB stuff, Back-to-back weeks on underdog. It was naked Mahomes this week. It was naked Jalen Hurts last week, not forcing the stacks on underdog in the large field tournament like this BR has actually been kind of the route you need. Man, this is crazy how far we've come. Sean says, for flex, are you starting Chase Brown or Woody full PPR? I mean, my gut says Woody. Let's see what our rankers think here. Let's see what our rankers think. Full PPR. Let me check the settings here. Make sure we got full PPR for you. Yeah, it's just Chase Brown not catching any passes and then Woody's role being so solid in the pass game. So we have Chase Brown at consensus 23, it looks like. And then where do we have Marks? Marks we have at consensus 22. So these guys are right here back to back. So I certainly get the question. It's close, but I personally would go Marks because I just think he's going to catch 3 to 4 balls. And that gives you just a much higher floor, which I think is what you're kind of looking for there. Billy says, Pete, do you do this weekly or is this a first? Either way, cool. No, I've done it weekly. Yeah, I didn't get to do it the first week because I was traveling, but I've done it weeks 2, 3, 4, and now 5. So this is 2, 3, 4, 5, fourth week in a row. Yeah, every Thursday at noon Eastern. Appreciate that though. Let's do Jaden Daniels. I think Jaden Daniels here as the last quarterback. I think, like I said, Kyler stacked with McBride would certainly be fine, but Jaden here as the naked quarterback, just being way undervalued if he goes, is the click I want to make there. Let's spin the wheel here, and if you guys ever have any ideas for challenges, basically. And the goal with these challenges, I don't want them to be something stupid, like really stupid, I should say, drafting, backups at each position or whatever. Like I still want to draft good teams, but I want to kind of push outside of what is maybe optimal and get into some weirder builds here. So let's see what comes up on the wheel here. And if you guys have any suggestions for things to add, I can. This is funny. I'm not going to do this one because we literally just did this. This is a 1-1-3-1 build, which, like I said, is something you should be utilizing a ton. So we'll get rid of that, and we'll see what else the wheel has in store for us here. Use only 2 games. So this is a pretty wild one. That means we have only 4 teams that we can use. And again, not something I would want to be doing in a ton of my drafts, but it's something we can make work. I think the best way to make this work is with a team like the Colts, who have a really good team total. I think these 4 here, Jonathan Taylor, Warren, Jones, Pittman, are really strong. I think the Lions, with that team total, Gibbs, Amon-Ra, Goff, Laporta, Jameson, these are definitely games where I would feel fine having 2 to 3 players from those teams. I think ideally it's probably 3 players from one team with a huge team total, 2 players from another team that have a really good team total, and then maybe 1 bring back from either one of those games. And here we go. We get the 101. So we can decide if we want to go the Colts route or the Lions route. I think I'll go the Lions route just because their pieces are a little cheaper generally. And I think with like JMO, it is tough between the Lions and the Colts. Let's go with Jahmyr Gibbs. We'll go with Jahmyr Gibbs here. So yeah, when in this kind of challenge, what you're really hoping for is obviously one of the games that goes completely nuts, or in the case of the Lions, with a 30-point team total that they score, 35, 40 points, and having 3 players from the same team is not actually capping your upside. The other interesting thing when you're thinking through kind of loading up on pieces from one offense, are the type of stacks. Typically we all gravitate to quarterback to pass catcher stacks. But when teams have really big team totals, I am willing to include the running back in the stack. Like a good example last week was Bijan Robinson and Michael Penix, right? Bijan's role in the passing game has been really good. He had that long touchdown where you got to double dip and you get the points from Penix and Bijan. That's kind of more in play for me with Gibbs and Goff, where you could certainly see a check down that results in a touchdown. I'd be more hesitant to do a Jonathan Taylor and Daniel Jones pairing in the same way I'd be more hesitant to do a Barkley and Hurts pairing when that quarterback is such a threat at the goal line and the running back doesn't catch quite as many passes. I start to worry about the negative correlation of their like really high-end ceiling outcomes, where I think with a Bijan, Penix, a Gibbs and Goff, a CMC in Purdy, or Mac Jones tonight, I suppose, it's a little bit more likely that you could get the double dip and that could function as a more traditional stack. So I can only pick players from two teams here. This is what we'll do. We'll do Jamar Chase as the bring back, and then we'll grab Tyler Warren. So we'll say that with the Lions going nuts, that the Bengals are throwing a ton and Jamar Chase kind of gets back to scoring at a decent clip. And now we have basically the challenge is complete for us because we can only pick players from two games. And so we know it's going to be the Detroit-Cincinnati game and the Indy-LV game. Let's see what other options we have for Las Vegas. Actually, not the worst options there for Las Vegas. I'm not going to put anything else from Cincy here, though. We're going to play it as just Jamar Chase. Yes, this is a funny quirk. FanDuel released or messed up on the pricing for their showdown slate tonight. And Mac Jones, I believe, is what, 1K, Eli? 1K salary? All right, let's see what we want to do here. We're done at tight end, so I can get Brock Bowers and Laporta out of here. Goff went, so this is actually a little trickier. But we didn't go with Jonathan Taylor. So I think Danny Dimes to Warren and Michael Pittman is the play. And I think what we do is we could do Ginty if we wanted to do a bring back on that game. I'm trying to think I think the best way to do this is it's going to end up in another 3 wide receiver build, which is funny because I'm like, you ought to be doing that at most 1 out of every 5 teams, but we're going to end up doing it twice here. This is what we're going to do. We're going to go Jameson. So then we have a Jahmyr Gibbs, Jameson, bring back with Chase Mini. And then we're going to grab Daniel Jones as our quarterback. And then the choice will be, we could either do Jacoby Myers as a bring back, or we could do a double stack with Daniel Jones here. Quick question here from Eat Powder. What are your thoughts on the Arizona backfield now? Yeah, I wrote about this in the Fantasy Life newsletter this morning, which if you guys are watching this stream and you are not subscribed to the Fantasy Life newsletter, I truly do not know what you are doing. It is a free newsletter. I write it 5 days a week, Sunday through Thursday. We got some other great writers who pitch in on Friday and Saturday. But my thoughts are this. I believe Michael Carter is going to take over most of the work that Trey Benson had, the early down work. However, I don't think Amari DiMarcado's role is going to change that much. I think he is going to be the third down back. So I think this is going to be a true kind of two-way committee between Michael Carter and Amari DiMarcado. However, this is an awesome spot for Michael Carter and the Cardinals running game. They're 7.5-point favorites. They're going to have, a positive game script against what I think is probably the worst team in the league. So that to me makes Carter more intriguing than he normally would be in this spot. It would be much less attractive to me, if they had a negative game script, implied by the game totals, etc. But I think Michael Carter is a strong start. And to kind of give you some perspective, across my high stakes leagues in the FFPC, we went very aggressive on Michael Carter. I mean, we were spending 30 to 40% of our fab on him in high dollar leagues because the buys have hit and we need wins. And he's a guy I think you can plug in this week and get a solid floor of production. Let's do Michael Pittman. We're going to do a double stack here from the Colts. So this is how this team ends up. If you guys are just tuning in right now, the prompt was use only 2 games here. So the 2 games we used was Indy and Las Vegas, and then Cincinnati and Detroit. And Daniel Jones to Michael Pittman and Tyler Warren, Jahmyr Gibbs and Jamison Williams, with Jamar Chase being the one player from the opponent there. And I'll say this, double stacks are, I think, much tougher to pull off in the Battle Royale when you only have 6 draft slots, when there's 64,000 entrants. You really need perfection from the slots, right? You're going to need 20 plus points from most of these guys, not the tight end position. So that's why I think if you are going to do the double stacks, including the tight end as part of that, is a much smarter way to do it. Hitting both 20 plus points from your wide receivers is a lot harder. But because the barrier for a tight end being optimal is lower, I think it can work. Like last week, Tyler Warren was in the winning lineup. I believe he had 14.8 points. Let me double check how many points he had last week. 15.8. So that makes it more viable doing the stack with the tight end. But the other thing that makes it attractive for me, and when I'm more willing to do it, and when I've traditionally had success with it, is when multiple pieces from the stack are not getting drafted in every contest. And that's important because it just means you're competing against far less rosters with that same stack. And so Daniel Jones with an ADP of 34.2, he is the quarterback 7 on this slate, which means he's going to be drafted less than 50%. That, I believe, is what Patrick Mahomes was last week. Mahomes was like QB 6 or 7, and he was drafted around 50%. And then Pittman at wide receiver, wide receiver 16, he's going to be drafted less than 30% of the time. So immediately there, you're getting more of a low-owned stack. And in those situations, I'm a little more open to the double stack. So I kind of like how this one shook out, just because I think the Colts and Lions are going to put up massive scores this week. So Jones, Michael Pittman, Warren, no bring back on Las Vegas, but then we have Jahmyr Gibbs, Jamison Williams with Jamar Chase bring back. Kind of a fun way to play this use only 2 games prompt. Anyone got any other suggestions for builds that I could attempt here? I'll spin the wheel with one of my existing ones, but if you have one, look at this. This is back-to-back times that the prompt that comes up is something we just did, a double stack. I'm not going to do double stack again because we just did that. So I need some more ideas for stuff to add here. Okay, someone suggested this last week, and it's a scary prompt, but I do think it's viable. The prompt is no top 10 ADP players. So this basically means I am going to forego my first round pick, which doesn't feel good. However, if you think about it, there are 6 players who typically go in the first round. And this prompt is basically saying, what if one of them isn't in the optimal lineup? Or what if one of them or none of them go for 20 plus points? There are certainly slates where that could be the case. And essentially not having a first round pick could help you avoid these landmines and create the optimal lineup. And again, the thing with these challenges, they're not something you would want to implement a lot, but it does go to show that getting into some of these different builds, I think could add some smart diversity to your overall portfolio here. So let's see how we can do this here, which means the first player we will take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 after Pickens, after Henry. So McBride would be the first player that we could take for this prompt. Brandon says draft 2 guys with an ADP of 35.5 or higher. I like that. 2 players, ADP 35.5 or higher. The higher, lower, when you're talking about ADPs, is always so confusing. By higher, I mean like 35.6, 35.7. That's how I mean it. But yes, it is confusing. Thank you for that one, Brandon. I like that. I feel like one fun one that could cause me to have to look some stuff up is only players from games with a total lower than 45. You know, with those two, with that challenge I just did there, I was looking for obviously better game environments. So that could be a fun one. So here we go. Already gonna be put in a tough spot here. I cannot select anyone with a top 10 ADP here per our cruel prompt. I forget who suggested this last week. It was someone in the chat. And I thought I could escape it, but I'm not going to be able to escape it now. But again, kind of going on why I don't think it's insane is, you know, the 1-3 or 1-4, what? They're going to have Achane or Amon-Ra almost 100% of the time, right? Like, you know, sometimes people might pull up Hampton, maybe they pull up Barkley, but for the majority of this week, the tens of thousands of rosters drafted in this contest will have Achane or Amon-Ra at pick 103. And what if those guys fail? What if they only score 10 points? That is a large swath of the contest that literally cannot win the tournament. So we can start to tell ourselves a story of how we could get away with this. All right, 1-3. So like I said, it was going to be Trey McBride, Nico, 2 guys we've already drafted. Let's do Trey McBride. I think doing this prompt as well, it's like, how do I pull this off? Well, I get the QB1 or the tight end 1 at the onesie positions to combat not having an RB2, RB3 overall with this selection. So we'll go Trey McBride. I do think Fields would be a good player for this team as well. Daniel's suggestion, only draft players with 1 or no TDs. Wow, that's a good one. I would have to do some quick on-the-fly research for that. I guess I can look here and just do the drop down. That's a good one. I like that. You guys might have to help me with on-the-fly research. All right, so it still needs to be Nico or later for this second pick. Although, what was the prompt? Was no players was it with an ADP after 10? So even though there are these good values falling, I still can't even do it. Okay, I was wondering why there was so much good value. It was because someone took Jared Goff at pick 6. And they're probably looking at me being like, somebody took Trey McBride at pick 6 or pick 3. All right, let's do Justin Fields. This is how we're going to win this one. We're going to say, hey, we're not going to have any of the top running backs or wide receivers, but we're going to have the QB1 on the slate, Justin Fields, and we're going to have the tight end 1 on the slate, Trey McBride. And it does always feel, you know, on a Thursday, on a Friday, before the slate locks, it feels hard to envision, how could I win without one of Gibbs, Achane, or Jonathan Taylor? And yet last week, the 2 running backs that were in the optimal lineup was Omarion Hampton. He had an ADP of like 13 or 14. And Ashton Jeanty, he had an ADP of like 31. And those were the 2 running backs you needed to win contests because they were the highest scoring running backs there. We will do Nico Collins. You know, we did a Trey McBride Nico team already, but I do think he has that caliber and that profile that can easily challenge these other guys. Amon-Ra, JSN, Garrett Wilson. I think Nico can match those guys, which I certainly need if I'm foregoing my first round pick here. Ape says hello, 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 hello to you. I do a few other Battle Royale and DFS themed shows each week on my YouTube channel. I do on Thursday afternoon, so at 3 p.m. Eastern today, I do a show called the Battle Royale Bash. And if you're a YouTube member on my channel, the Peter Overzet YouTube channel, you're eligible to enter the bash. You drop a hashtag in the chat, and I spin a wheel, and whoever's name comes up, I send them the link to the stream. They hop on, I pay for the draft, and we draft a team together. And if the team finishes top 200 in the contest, we split the money. So it's been a fun way to get to meet a lot of people from the community. All right, we are back on the clock. We're only going to be looking at running back and wide receiver. Man, Breece and Fields. Do you think we can thread this needle here? Do you think Justin Fields can throw some passes to Breece Hall? We were just talking about those quarterback and wide receiver connections and how they can work, and specifically like the Gibbs and the Goff one. Fields, Breece Hall's an interesting one because Fields doesn't check down a ton. They just don't throw a ton, period. However, Breece Hall's a really good pass catching back, really explosive in the receiving game. And this total is so good. You know, the Jets are expected to score a ton of points. So I don't mind the Fields and Breece Hall pairing here and just saying, hey, if they score 30 points, Fields and Breece Hall could be responsible for all of it. The other show I do is on Friday afternoons on my channel. It's called Off and on the Clock. I do that with the Badge Bros, John Warner and Nez. And we do a full slate preview, share our favorite sleepers for the slate, draft some teams, do some 12-person drafts as well. And then we build some pick'ems on Underdog. Also, make sure you guys take advantage of in the lobby this week on Underdog. They're running Boost-tober, and it's unlimited 30% boost on your pick'em. So if you're building a pick'em, make sure you use that 30%. Waddle might slide all the way back here. We'll see if this roll drafter here. If not, we're definitely going to get to a 2 running back build this time. Yeah, let's grab Waddle. I think Waddle's such a strong play here. Carolina secondary, not bad whatsoever. Daniel says he doesn't check down. I mean, Breece Hall had 5 receptions last week versus the Dolphins. Someone was throwing him the ball. Let's do Woody Marks is kind of fun. Kenneth Walker also. I mean, I know Sharps is back, but we know Walker has the ability to rip off big plays. This is a spot where I definitely want a player who has a lower ADP, because otherwise I haven't done anything here. I guess not taking a first round player is a pretty good way to get unique. Let's do Woody Marks. Just play that takeover. It's kind of a pairing where we say the Houston actually scores a lot of points here, and play both Woody Marks and Nico together. All right. Would you guys want to do, I normally don't, I haven't done one of these before, but Underdog has a contest called the Dog Bowl, and it's a 12-person draft, and it's a qualifier to to go to Kansas City and compete in a final tournament in week 14 where there are $1 million in total prizes. So if you guys want to jump in this with me, the top 3 finishers get a 10K prize plus the full paid trip to Kansas City to go draft. I normally don't draft a lot of these. I like to focus on the 6 persons. That's kind of just where my strength and what I spend most of my time focusing on. But I do like mixing in a few of these dog bowl drafts. So if any of you guys want to hop in with me, we got one more spot here and we can mix it up a little bit and do a 12-person draft. All right, let's see what Billy says here. He just traded Romeo Dobbs for Woody Marks. That's a great trade, by the way. That is a awesome sell high trade on Dobbs coming off the 2 things. What do you think about the trade, trying to capitalize on the Dobbs 3 TD performance? Yeah, I think that was beautiful. I'm surprised you were able to get Woody just because he's coming off of a massive game as well. But as far as who you're going to feel comfortable starting each week, Woody Marks is going to have a higher floor. I think the Packers passing game is going to be kind of a rotating carousel. We're going to have a Tucker Kraft week. We're going to have a Matthew Golden week. You know, that's just kind of how that offense operates without a true number 1. So I think that was a really sharp trade by you. So obviously, if you guys aren't familiar, these 12-person drafts, it's double the amount of players getting drafted, right? Instead of 36 players in a 6-person contest, it's 72 players getting drafted, which means we get a lot deeper in the player pool here. Let's see. I'm trying to make sure this the best way for you guys to be able to view this draft. There we go. It's probably the best way. So I got the 1-5 here. I am not going to be foregoing my first round pick in the dog bowl here. By ADP, it looks like I would be getting either Omarion Hampton, Amon-Ra St. Brown. I wouldn't mind Amon-Ra. I wouldn't mind doing a Jared Goff double stack. Barkley goes. I have my choice between Hampton and Amon-Ra. Let's do Hampton. I think running back just dries up a lot faster on this slate than wide receiver. Like you look at, Javonte by pick 14 versus you can still be getting guys like Waddle much later than that. So let's go running back just because of positional scarcity here a little bit. So Hampton. These are, I would say, the most competitive drafts on Underdog. The best players on the site all really want to win seats to the Dog Bowl. It's an awesome experience. I've gotten to go each of the previous years, not as a player, unfortunately, but just as part of the Underdog group. And it really is a pretty fun weekend to be able to fly out there. You get to meet a bunch of people. You do the drafts on Saturday night, and then they have a big party where everybody gets to go sweat them on Sunday. And you get to compete against the best of the best on Underdog. So I would say if you're just starting out, maybe steer clear of these a little bit, just because these are where the sharks are swimming. But it's also just a very fun opportunity to get to compete for prizes that big. Fatty McFat says, Pete and everyone, happy Thursday. Happy Thursday to you as well. I always get excited for Thursday. That's when I get like fully locked in for the upcoming DFS slate. Wednesdays, I watch my daughter on Wednesdays. That's kind of my day to decompress, reset, move on from the previous week. And then Thursday is like, all right, we're locked in. Thursday, Friday, research, drafting, all of that good stuff. So Thursdays always feel fun to me. Hope and opportunity. And then Sunday evening, when I haven't won at DFS, then I can be sad and depressed again. You can see here in round 1, it was 9 running backs selected, only 3 wide receivers, JSN, Amon-Ra, Garrett Wilson. Best Ball Viper, who's in the 1 hole here, he actually won the Dog Bowl last year. He won the dog bowl, so he's the defending dog bowl champ. Jasta, who's in the 12 hole, he qualified for the dog bowl already, so he's trying to get extra seats. So when you win a seat to the dog bowl, you get to do 3 drafts. You can win up to 3 seats, which theoretically means you could have up to 9 drafts. So even though they've already qualified, they're getting the free trip, all of that, they're still trying to get extra seats at the dog bowl. Chris G qualified for the first dog bowl. Patrick Barnes YouTube qualified for the dog bowl last year. Dan also qualified for the dog bowl this year. So it is lots of heavy hitters in here. In general, I try to prioritize running backs and wide receivers in the dog bowl. The opportunity cost of taking tight ends over a round 2 or round 3 running back or wide receiver, it can catch up with you a little quicker. And right here, like the Warren, Bowers, I think you can include Ferguson there. It's a little flat. Let's see here. Tetaroya, Igbuka, QJ, Waddle. To me, it's Tetaroya or Jalen Waddle. Tetaroya seems due for a big game. I mean, his target shares have been awesome. 9, 10, 8, 8. The big game's coming for him. Let's grab him here, and we'll go with a double rookie start, Omarion Hampton and Tetaroya. This is a great suggestion from Sean. The $3 12-man draft is a good place to practice before entering the dog bowl. That's a great shout out. So I believe that one is called the Squib, if I'm remembering correctly. Yes, the Squib Kick. $3 12-person drafts. 3,756 entrants. First place gets 1,000. Awesome suggestion there from Sean. So on this team, I'm generally not, overly worried about, building out stacks with my first couple of players. Like I'm going to need these guys to do well regardless. I do think building out something with the Chargers, though, could be interesting. Or even Jaden Daniels opposite Omarion Hampton. Have we gotten any news about Terry McLaurin yet? Has anyone seen anything? I did see Deebo Samuel was back at practice today. He should be good. But I have not seen much on McLaurin. I don't know if you guys have. Okay, he remains sidelined at practice. This was yesterday with that quad injury. So that doesn't sound good to me. But Dan Quinn told reporters he was trending in the right direction. Let's see. What if we draft Deebo, we could then see if any of these quarterbacks would come back around to us between Jaden or Justin Herbert. And if not, we could build out another stack. So we'll go Deebo here. So Omarion Hampton, Tetaroya, Deebo. All right, we got a question from Eat Powder here. Trade Brees for Devontae Adams in PPR. I have CMC and HN 12 team. You're one of the only analysts I listen to. Will you tell me how strong are your wide receivers? Are you really weak at wide receiver? I think that's a fairish trade. I would prefer Brees, especially with Braylon Allen going on IR. But if you're really weak at wide receiver, and Adams is a meaningful upgrade to your starting lineup, I don't think it's a bad trade. I think it's pretty fair. The thing about Adams in PPR too is like the selling point for Adams right now is just his role in the red zone. They really look for him there. And so in PPR, that kind of calling card for him is a little less attractive because he's just not going to rack up a bunch of receptions because Puka's there racking up all the receptions. But your other receivers are Evans, Flowers, Pittman. Yeah. I think I would do that then, knowing that you have CMC and Achane, knowing that you're not going to have Evans still for a little bit. Flowers gets the ding without Lamar. Pittman's solid. But yeah, that sounds like it would be a pretty meaningful upgrade to your starting lineup. I would go ahead and do that. All right, so we got Omarion Hampton, Tedoroya McMillan, and Deebo Samuel in this draft so far. Jaden Daniels does go. The drafter behind me took Ladd, so it's very unlikely Justin Herbert would fall past me. But that's fine. We can look for a different stack. Finding Value Fantasy says, do you feel like the scrolls this week? And for people who aren't familiar with the terminology, so on Underdog, we say scroll the F down. Scrolls I define as players who aren't getting drafted in 100% of contests. That's generally going to be after ADP 33, 34 or so. So that's what we mean when we say scrolls. And Finding Value says, do you feel like the scrolls this week don't seem as fun and you find yourself stacking a low-end quarterback with a wide receiver to get unique, or who are some of your favorites? Yeah, I mean, every single week, specifically at the running back position, the amount of scrolls has diminished. And that happens for two reasons, right? Like, we get clarity on backfields. The bye weeks have hit. And there are just a lot less running backs who just project very cleanly and separate at the position. So I do completely agree with you at running back. I think at quarterback, wide receiver, tight end, there's still a ton of scrolls I like. I mentioned a few of them at the top of the show. I think the Chargers wide receivers, Ladd and Keenan, are awesome scrolls. I mentioned Jameson Williams. I do put out a full list of my favorite scroll down plays. That's for YouTube members on my channel. Or if you guys have signed up for my Underdog Masterclass, I include them there as well. Let's see. What do we want to do here? Rachaad White goes. I think he would have been a strong pick. Tight end has gotten wiped out. Let's see. We could do Cortland Sutton here. Godwin was the other guy we've been going to. We can do Sutton. I'm not feeling nothing set up super clean for me there. Where did Jameson go? Yeah, I was hoping to be able to like get Jameson and do a Goff stack. I didn't love how that shook out. I took Cortland Sutton. This might just be a spot where I go naked quarterback. Billy says he likes this 12-team draft format. It's a little more of a challenge than the 6-team. Yeah, for sure. And it's like, in the 6-person drafts, you can kind of plot out what you want to do. You kind of know the ADP. Here, I guess you can plot it out once you kind of know the ADPs and you get familiar with the drafting landscape, but it can be hard to anticipate like who's coming back. Like setting up stacks is just a lot more challenging when you have 11 other drafters before you pick. I think I am going to do another Daniel Jones. I love this spot. I think he's a great quarterback to roll out naked. None of these tight ends like move the needle for me. So let's get my quarterback and then we can just figure out who we want to take at tight end at the end. So we have Daniel Jones, Omarion Hampton, Tedoroya McMillan, Deebo Samuel, Cortland Sutton. Dallas Goedert not practicing with a knee issue. That's not great. There are some like mini correlations here I could do. I honestly don't mind Darren Waller. I know it feels like chasing, 2 touchdowns last week. But he also had a 40% targets per route run. They were looking for him, feeding him the ball when he was in the game. And to me, like the whole negativity around Darren Waller has always just been his health, right? It's like he doesn't stay healthy, which is an issue from a season-long perspective, right? You want to have multiple weeks from a guy in season-long, but in DFS, we just need the single week. So as long as Darren Waller is healthy, he's probably slightly undervalued. And then he kind of plays nicely opposite Tedoroy McMillan, so I can be a little bit more concentrated on a couple of games. Do you guys like any of these other tight ends here? I'll read off to you the available tight ends. Zach Ertz. So I could do Ertz and Debo opposite Hampton. Although Ertz's routes kind of dropped last week, which was a little concerning. Juwan Johnson. I don't love that he has this DMP with the ankle issue, because otherwise I love him at the Dome. You know, his first 2 Dome games here in the Superdome, 11 targets, 9 targets. Dallas Goedert would be nice opposite Cortland Sutton, but he's not practicing. Mark Andrews isn't going to have Lamar. I mentioned Waller. Schultz has actually had back-to-back games with 6 targets, which is kind of impressive. Maybe Ingram as a bit of a sleeper as he gets healthier. He had 7 targets in his first game back. You don't like Bryce to get feisty against the Dolphins D? No, I like Bryce. I like this spot for the Panthers. I appreciate this from Ramsey. The masterclass is advertised. I'm fresh off the porch into the Battle Royale streets. I have a solid framework to build on. Yeah, if you guys want to check it out, if you're completely new to the Underdog drafting ecosystem, I did put a masterclass together this summer with the Badge Bros. You can find it at underdogmasterclass.com. It's a really good resource and tool to know everything you need to know about diving into these drafts. Tight end question: Kincaid versus New England or Harold Fannin versus the Vikings in Europe? Man, I am going to ask a follow-up there. Is that PPR, half point, or standard? Because Kincaid is going to tilt more toward standard or half point PPR. That game has a 50-point total. He could always score a touchdown. Fannin versus the Vikings, you're hoping more for the PPR stuff. Gabriel taking over, youth movement, should see more targets than Kincaid. So I would say Fannin for full PPR, Kincaid for half or standard. Jets tied to, Tremble went. I also like Taylor, but he went as well. Let's do Waller. I'll be the guy still clicking Waller here. We'll do Waller opposite Tedoroy McMillan. So there's my team. There's my Dog Bowl team. Daniel Jones, naked quarterback. Omarion Hampton and Deebo Samuel from that Chargers-Commanders game. Tedoroy McMillan and Darren Waller from that Miami-Carolina game. And then a one-off Cortland Sutton at Philadelphia. Definitely not the sexiest team I've drafted, and definitely not the best team I've drafted, but it's a team. It's a team. Like I said, when you're drafting against these sharks in here, it can be tricky. Here's our guy, Charlie. Charlie did Bryce Young to Tremble, David Montgomery, Woody Marks, Garrett Wilson, Marvin Harrison. Appreciate you guys hanging out in the chat. Like I said, every Thursday, noon Eastern, here on the Fantasy Life YouTube channel. Make sure you guys are subscribed to the Fantasy Life YouTube channel and to the newsletter. And I should also say, I don't think I can announce it quite yet, but there's going to be a promotion coming from Fantasy Life, I think later tonight, that is going to make it very easy to get a tier 2 sub, the highest level for all the premium tools, the utilization report, the league sync, for free. There's going to be a promo coming for that. So stay tuned for that. If you've been wanting to check it out, I got word of this promo yesterday. It is unbelievably easy, and it's going to be free. All you have to do is follow one simple step that I can't reveal quite yet, but keep an eye out for that if you guys would like to get tier 2 for free on Fantasy Life for the next year. All right, guys, this has been a blast. I will see a few of you, I'm sure, at 3 p.m. Eastern and for the other shows this week. And until next time, this has been the Week 5 DFS Jam.